Greetings, Boogie fans! Michael here, and a few months ago, I made a video going over which starter was the best one to pick for every main series Pokemon game in regards to how well it matched up against its particular game. This video will be a similar concept, but instead of the best starter, it's the best Pokemon in addition to your starter. I will be going over what I believe to be the best Pokemon to have on a playthrough team alongside your starter in every main series Pokemon game. For a Pokemon to be selected as the best, it must be obtained relatively early and easily, match up well against a lot of the big battles in the game, and of course, be a strong and useful Pokemon. Also, my goal is to find Pokemon that are useful no matter which starter you pick. So because of that, I will be intentionally excluding any grass, fire, or water type Pokemon, plus electric or normal if it's one of the games where that is the starter type. And I think this goes without saying, but just in case, this will be my opinion. Which Pokemon is the best for this is a subjective thing, since there's no way to know for sure with a mathematical method or formula. I can assure you though, my decisions are based on hard data, like their stats, movesets, location, etc., not just on which Pokemon species I happen to personally like. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, tap that bell for notifications, you know the thing. And let's get started with Generation 1, the games being Red, Blue, and Yellow. And for these, I narrowed it down to 2 Pokemon. The first is Nidoking. You can get Nidoran Male very early on Route 22 next to Viridian before you even enter Viridian Forest, and since it evolves into Nidorino early, and the Moonstone is obtained early in Mount Moon, you can get a Nidoking very early. Its level up moveset is atrocious, but its TM move pool is so wide that you can easily make up for that. Nidoking is actually the Gen 1 speedrun Pokemon of choice, since it can be so strong so early, learning Thrash at just level 23. Combine that with its ability to learn Horn Drill, an OHKO move you can make always hit with a times accuracy, and you've got a Pokemon that can sweep through a lot. However, Nidoking has a few drawbacks. They're not huge ones, but they're worth mentioning. The first is that, as I said, it needs TMs to have good moves, aside from Thrash and I guess Horn Drill too. So that kind of is gonna burn through your TM reservoir, since TMs are one use, then done. Also, it's a poison type, which is not great. Poison is pretty much not useful offensively, since most grass types are also poison types, and it makes it overlap with Venusaur if you pick Venusaur. Like I said, these aren't huge drawbacks. Nidoking is still great and I think worth using. But there's one Pokemon that I think is a bit better than Nidoking in Gen 1, and that Pokemon is Alakazam. Alakazam is a psychic type, which by nature makes it overpowered in Gen 1. I won't go into too much detail about this since I've discussed it a lot in videos lately, but in short, the psychic type was amazing because it had effectively no weaknesses. The dark type didn't exist, psychic was immune to ghost in Gen 1, and the bug moves were so weak they may as well not have been there. So a psychic type, you should probably have one on your team in Gen 1 no matter what it is. But Alakazam specifically is the best non-legendary psychic type out there. It's the strongest. There are a few that technically have higher base stat totals, Starmie, Exeggutor, and Hypno, but Alakazam has the highest special stat and highest speed stat of all of them, which, in my opinion, are the most important stats for a psychic type. Side note, in Gen 1, special attack and special defense were just one stat. So Alakazam's massive base 135 special stat means it hit like a truck and took special hits extremely well. It doesn't take physical attacks well, but it's so fast and hits so hard that it's just gonna outspeed an OHKO most of the time anyways. It's also extremely accessible. Abra can be found before you get your second badge, and while switch training it to evolve into a Kadabra is a bit annoying, once it evolves, you can make it an Alakazam immediately since it evolves by trading. So you can have an Alakazam at level 16, and it'll have Confusion right away and continue learning better and better psychic moves as it levels up. Yes, it does require trading to evolve, but honestly, I don't think that should be a disqualifying factor, since if you're playing on a ROM, you can get around that and if you're playing on the Virtual Console, you can do the training with the Virtual Console versions. If you're playing on a legit cartridge on an old Game Boy, you might have more trouble. But honestly, Kadabra is still pretty good. It's just a slightly less good Alakazam. In short, Alakazam is very strong, very fast, easily accessible, and has the best typing in the game, the most broken a type has ever been. It is wildly helpful for any Gen 1 team. Next up is Generation 2, the games being Gold, Silver, and Crystal. And the best team member, in my opinion, is still Alakazam. Although first, I suppose I should mention my two runner-ups. Runners-up. I'm not sure which one. Anyways, those two are Kenya the Spearow and Ampharos. Kenya is the Spearow that you're supposed to take to some guy's friend, but you are completely capable of just holding on to it and committing Grand Theft Spearow. Kenya is great because it's a strong flying type with access to the best single-turn flying move in the game, Drill Peck, and it's technically a traded Pokemon, meaning it gets boosted experience, which is wildly helpful. Its normal typing can also come in handy against the occasional ghost-type foes. Ampharos is also very good. Its electric typing helps out in a lot of places, and it's found extremely early, allowing you to have super effective damage against the first gym and the second gym's strongest Pokemon, Scyther. It also matches up well against several later game battles, and being an electric type means it only has one weakness. Unfortunately, it's not available in Crystal. But in my opinion, neither are as widely useful as Alakazam. Now, Alakazam did get some nerfs between Gens 1 and 2 that I should cover. The Dark type is now a thing, it lost its immunity to Ghost and is weak to it instead, and its special stat was split into Special Attack and Special Defense, resulting in a drop to its Special Defense. The Bug type was still mostly garbage though, so that's still not much of a problem. But the buffs that Alakazam got in Gen 2 more than outweigh the nerfs, in my opinion. Fearow and Ampharos excel at their particular types. Alakazam can excel at several. Fearow's only physical coverage moves are the 20 base power Mud Slap and Steel Wing, which is risky coverage since it's only good against the types that Fearow is weak to. Ampharos's only special coverage move is Fire Punch, which is good, but very limited. Meanwhile, Alakazam can learn all 3 elemental punches, which nowadays are useless on it since they're physical moves, but back then they were special moves, which means they can take advantage of Alakazam's incredible base 135 special attack. This coverage is so good that literally not a single Pokemon in the game resists all 4 of those types. And incredibly, the elemental punches are TMs you can buy in the Goldenrod department store. You can catch Abra right outside of Goldenrod, and like before, trading evolves Kadabra right away, which means you can have an Alakazam with Confusion, Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, and Fire Punch at the absurdly low level of 16. That incredible coverage of strong moves, and you'll only replace Confusion with better psychic moves as it levels up, means that you can just body most of the game with just Alakazam. Its psychic typing sweeps through Team Rocket's poison types, Morty's poison ghosts, Chuck's fighting types, Koga's poison types, and Bruno's fighting types. Its coverage is also incredible, giving it super effective moves for at least one member of every single Johto gym leader or Elite Four members team, other than Whitney, but Whitney's gonna suck no matter what you use. Like I said, Kenya and Ampharos are still very good and absolutely worth using in my opinion, but Alakazam's incredible power and speed and move pool and the fact that you can have it at such a low level makes it the best by a sizable margin in my opinion. Yes, it is still a trade evolution, but hey, like I said, you can get around that, and also Kadabra is still very good. It's got like base 120 special attack and 105 speed, which isn't as good, but that's still great. Next is Generation 3, starting with the Hoenn games, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And these games don't have as much of a standout Pokemon like the first 2 generations did. Well, they do, but it's a starter, Swampert. Swampert is amazing in these games, but obviously I'm not picking a starter in this situation. A Pokemon that is not my pick for best team member, but I think should be mentioned is Hariyama. It's obtainable very early, and the fighting type is excellent for many battles in the game. I might have picked Hariyama as the best team member for this video, if not for Blaziken, because Blaziken is a fighting type, so if you choose Torchic, there's really no reason for you to pick Hariyama. Although, I heavily recommend it if you pick Trico or Mudkip though. My selection for these games is a Pokemon that is really important no matter which starter you pick, and that is Manectric. The electric type is basically a necessity in Hoenn, because after all, water is everywhere, and grass cannot handle all water types on its own. Manectric is your best option for an electric type, because not only does it have very solid special attack and speed, but it's also the earliest accessible electric type, being found between the 2nd and 3rd gyms. Okay, technically Plusle and Minun are also found in the same spot, but dear God, do not use them. In addition to having electric attacking power, it also comes with Thunder Wave right away, which is always helpful, especially for catching other team members later. Bite is not the most stellar coverage move, but at least it uses Manectric's superior special attack stat in this gen. Manectric has the best time in Emerald because you fight both Juan and Wallace, but it's still gonna be super useful in all 3 Hoenn games because water and flying types are everywhere. You need an electric type, and Manectric is the best one. Next up is Fire Red and Leaf Green, the first remakes in this video. Now, in most of my something in every game videos, the answer for the remakes is the same as the originals. But that is not the case here, because Alakazam got worse, while Nidoking got better. The reason for Alakazam getting worse is that the nerfs to Alakazam between Gens 1 and 2 were balanced out by Alakazam getting the 3 elemental punches in Gen 2. However, in Fire Red and Leaf Green, it can't learn them at all. Alakazam's Fire Red Leaf Green coverage is limited to just Shockwave and Thief. I mean, there are other physical moves, but physical moves don't matter for Alakazam. Now, don't get me wrong, I still heavily recommend using Alakazam. The Psychic type is still incredible in the Kanto region due to the underwhelming bug types and complete lack of dark types, and it's still a very powerful Pokemon you can get at a very low level. It's just not my pick for the best one anymore, because it's not as ridiculously overpowered as it was before. Meanwhile, Nidoking, which already had a fantastic move pool, has an even better one in Gen 3, and it can take advantage of all of these attacks since its physical and special attack are both solid. It learns water, ice, fighting, fire, steel, electric, ground, ghost, poison, rock, dark, and normal moves, plus the only good bug move at the time, Mega Horn. That is at least one attack from 13 of the 17 types at the time. That is absurd. Combine that with its all-around solid stats and the fact you can, again, get one as low as level 16, and you have just a freaking incredibly versatile Pokemon. Yes, it's still a poison type, which overlaps with Venusaur, and yes, you're probably gonna have to use single-use TMs on it, but those are the only cons, and the pros of it vastly outweigh the cons in my opinion. Nidoking, you can use it for pretty much any major battle if you make its move pool right, which you can. Now on to Generation 4, starting with the Sinnoh games, Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. And for me, this choice was easy, Staraptor. Every pre-Gen 7 team needs a flyer, and Staraptor is not only the best flyer option in Sinnoh, but it's also just freaking incredible, period. First off, it's accessible. You literally can catch Starly in the first route of the game. Secondly, it has fantastic stats. Base 120 physical attack and 100 speed is very good. And it's not super frail either. Finally, it has access to the moves it needs to dominate. Fly was buffed to 90 base power in Gen 4, so you can do big damage with that, or another flying move like Aerial Ace or Brave Bird. It of course can devastate enemies with Stab Return, but then it also gets Close Combat, the best fighting move in the game, which allows it to take out Rock and Ice types, 2 of its 3 weaknesses. Basically, if you're not using a Staraptor in Sinnoh, you're doing something wrong. Or you've already used one before and you want to change it up, which is fair, but still, you should be using Staraptor. Next is Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and like with Fire Red and Leaf Green, I'm not keeping my answer the same between the originals and the remakes. So Alakazam has been dethroned. Alakazam is still very solid, but it's got the same issues it had in Fire Red and Leaf Green. Not much coverage. The elemental punches are now post-game move tutors, not early game TMs, but even if they were early game TMs, they're physical now, so they're useless on Alakazam. Plus, dark types are in the Johto region, and the bug type is not bad anymore, so Alakazam is really hurting in Gen 4. It's still very good, it's a solid psychic type, but it's definitely not OP anymore. So to me it makes sense to swap out Alakazam for one of my two original runner-ups. Runners-up, still don't know. Kenya the Fearow or Ampharos. Both of these Pokemon got some pretty substantial buffs between Gen 2 and Gen 4. Fearow now has access to Stronger Fly, Aerial Ace at a pretty low level, and a few other coverage moves like U-Turn. Ampharos now gets Discharge not long after evolving, plus the coverage moves of Signal Beam and Power Gem. Both of these Pokemon hit pretty hard. Fearow is just faster, and Ampharos is bulkier. Both of these Pokemon are excellent, and I definitely recommend using them, but I think I have to give the edge to Ampharos because of how absurdly early you can get it. Before you even fight Falkner. You can use it for super effective damage in his gym right away, then against Bugsy's Scyther, then use it to paralyze Whitney's Miltank, which is very helpful and I highly recommend doing that, which means that this Pokemon is at least partially helpful in all three of the first three gyms. It continues to be helpful later, particularly against Claire and Lance, and once it gets Signal Beam, that's some really nice bug-type coverage. Also, it only has one weakness, which is nice. Ampharos is not as much of a standout as Alakazam was in Gen 2, but it is still a staple member of any Johto team. I still recommend Kenya and Alakazam though, it's just Ampharos is, I think, the best one. Now on to Generation 5, starting with Black and White. And one thing I want to say up front is that I think your team should have a fighting type, like Conkeldurr or Sock or Scrafty. However, I can't select any of these Pokemon as the best member for any starter because of Emboar. It doesn't make sense to use one of these fighting types if you've picked Emboar. But you should use a fighting type if you don't pick Emboar. The Pokemon I decided on is Excadrill. You can get Drillbur very early, before the second gym, and its ground typing is helpful against Elisa. Then once it evolves into Excadrill, it becomes very versatile and useful. It either resists or is immune to 11 of the 17 types, and it has very diverse coverage that lets it be useful against a lot of big important plot battles. Combine those benefits with a monstrous attack stat, decent bulk, and great HP, and you've got a fantastic Pokemon on your squad. I do want to mention that Crocodile is also a very useful Pokemon here. I just gave the edge to Excadrill because its Steel typing is really helpful defensively. Now on to Black 2 and White 2, and a Pokemon I want to mention up front that is not my pick here is Lucario. Riolu is available before the first gym, and if you devote the effort to raising its friendship, you can have a Lucario very early, which is fantastic. Lucario is not only strong, but the fighting and steel types are both very good in the Unova region. However, like in Black and White, a fighting type Pokemon overlaps with Emboar, and therefore, it doesn't make sense to use Lucario if you pick Tepig. Since Lucario is not a smart choice for all three starters, it can't be my selection here. Although I think it would be the best if Emboar was not a fighting type. But since I can't go with Lucario, I'm going with another steel type. This time, Magnezone. Magnemite can be caught before the second gym, which is very early, so it can be a reliable team member close to right off the bat. While it's not strong against poison, it is immune to it, making it useful against Roxy immediately. Additionally, since the electric field location is timed quite nicely, your Magnemite will likely have just become a Magneton when you get there, so you can turn it into its strongest form, which has incredible stats, immediately. Another reason it's great is because the steel electric typing is very good. Electric is of course strong against Skyla and Marlin, but Magnezone resists the primary attacking type for every single gym leader except Clay. Excadrill is still pretty solid, but you get it later in the game now, plus the swapping of a gym leader that it was strong against, Bryson, for a gym leader that it's weak against, Marlin, hurts it a lot in my opinion. Magnezone will be an effective wall for you for many different battles, plus it gets Thunder Wave early, which is always nice, and it hits like a truck. Next up is Generation 6, starting with X and Y, and an honorable mention I want to say up front is Talonflame. It's got great stats, available very early on, very solid Pokemon. However, it's a fire type, and in X and Y you have 2 different chances to select a fire type starter, so chances are high that its fire typing will be redundant. Therefore, it is not a good pick, no matter your starter. To me, there is a clear and easy choice for the best team member in X and Y, Mega Lucario. Riolu is found extremely early, before you even fight the first gym, and while it's not much help in that first gym, it's stellar against Grant later. You could wait to just get the gift one from Karina, but I personally recommend catching your own Riolu early because it's helpful against Grant. By the time you get to the Tower of Mastery, it's likely a Lucario, and then you get its Mega Stone, the first Mega Evolution you use in the game. And let me tell you something, Mega Lucario is busted. Adaptability changes its stab boost from 1.5 times to 2 times, so that's already amazing, but then the thing has base 145 attack, 140 special attack, and base 112 speed. And you have this monster before you even have 4 badges! Mega Lucario can easily sweep through the rest of the game, doesn't even matter the type matchup honestly. Ramos can't touch it, 2 of Clement's 3 Pokemon are weak to fighting, Valerie gets destroyed, Olympia is neutral, Wolfric gets obliterated, it resists Drasna, and then it beats half of Diantha's team. It is wildly overpowered. Now I know what you're thinking, Lucario is a fighting type, which overlaps with Chestnut, and I just disqualified Lucario in Black 2 and White 2 for overlapping with Emboar. However, there's a difference here. Lucario and Emboar are pretty equally effective fighting type Pokemon for a playthrough. But Mega Lucario is a vastly superior fighting type Pokemon to Chestnut. And besides, the 2 only share 1 weakness to fire. It is absolutely worth it to use Mega Lucario even if you picked Chestnut. But honestly, you shouldn't pick Chestnut anyways. Mega Venusaur is a vastly superior grass type. Now on to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and actually for these remakes, I'm keeping my answer the same, Manectric. The electric type is still very important in the Hoenn region, and Manectric was the best one in Gen 3, but now it's even better. Manectric got 3 big buffs between Gen 3 and Gen 6. Number 1, Lightning Rod now makes it immune to electric and boosts its special attack when it's hit. Number 2, it has many more coverage moves, including Flamethrower and Snarl. And number 3, it can now Mega Evolve. The stone can be found before you get the Mega Bracelet, which means you can Mega Evolve it as early as possible. And let me tell you, Mega Manectric is vicious. Base 135 special attack and speed. This thing will decimate so many opponents. Next up is Generation 7, starting with Sun and Moon. And up front, I want to say that Rabombi is great if you don't pick Primarina, and Alolan Muck is great if you don't pick Incineroar. I highly recommend both of those Pokemon, but of course, they substantially overlap with starters, so they can't be my pick here. They are excellent though. The Pokemon that I think is the best that doesn't overlap with any starters is Toucannon. It's the regional bird, which means you can pick it up right away on like the very first route of the game, which is nice. It's not as impressive stat-wise as some of the other regional birds, having great attack, decent bulk, but disappointing speed. But that's not a big issue here in my opinion, because the flying type is just so good in Alola. A normal flying Pokemon is good for Hala, the Grass Trial, the Ghost Trial defensively, Guzma, the Dragon Trial, Hapu defensively, Hala again, and Acerola defensively. Clearly a flying type Pokemon, potentially with the normal type tacked on, is very useful for an Alola playthrough, and Toucannon is your best flying type option in Sun and Moon. But it doesn't stop there, because it can fulfill other roles too thanks to its surprisingly solid coverage with moves like Smackdown, Brick Break, Flame Charge, Steel Wing, Thief, and U-Turn, plus skill link boosted Fury Attack, Bullet Seed, and Rock Blast once you get to the move tutor. Like I said, it's held back a bit by its speed, but hey, you get the Quick Claw pretty freaking early, so that can sometimes get around that. Toucannon is a very solid Pokemon that I absolutely recommend you use in Sun and Moon. However, in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, a new Pokemon was added to the game that outclasses Toucannon, Hawlucha. This Pokemon is absurdly useful in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Like, oh my god, let's just list off the reasons why. Number 1, Hawlucha has excellent stats, which are made even more impressive due to how early you can get it, at like level 9. Number 2, you can get Cha the Hawlucha from an in-game trade before the normal trial, meaning you can use it for that battle, and it's a traded Pokemon, allowing it to conveniently level up faster. And number 3, the combination of Flying and Fighting Stab is super effective against the majority of the major battles in the game. The Totem Gumshoos Eradicate, Hala, the Totem Araquanid, the Totem Lurantis, Olivia, the Totem Togedemaru, Guzma, Nanu, the Totem Kamou-o, the Totem Rabambi, Mullane, and Olivia again are all weak to fighting or flying. Sure, some of them can hit Hawlucha back with super effective damage, but like, come on, the fact that fighting and flying cover all of those battles is ridiculous. Seriously guys, whether it's the in-game trade Hawlucha named Cha or just one you find in the grass, use a Hawlucha. I've done it myself, it was great. Next up is Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and I'll keep this one short, it's still Nidoking. Alakazam is still quite good, but its limited coverage simply cannot measure up to Nidoking's unrivaled move pool. Plus, Venusaur is not a starter anymore, so there's not even the con of Nidoking's poison typing overlapping with one of the starters. Nidoking's incredible. Then finally is Generation 8, Pokemon Sword and Shield. And to me, the choice is clear, Corviknight. Rookie D is found on literally the first route of the game, which is as accessible as it gets. Its pure flying type is also very good, completely walling fighting types rather than being neutral to them. The type combination of Flying Steel is also excellent. Not only is it fantastic defensively, since it has 2 immunities, 8 resistances, and only 2 weaknesses, but it allows Corviknight to help out in 6 of the 8 gyms in Sword, 5 of the 8 in Shield. Milo, Kabu Centiskorch, Bee, Opal, Gordy, Melanie, and Raihan. It's not hurt by sand and has the type advantage over Gigalith. Combine those benefits with its very solid stats, it's quite a bulky Pokemon, which is nice, and you have a very good Pokemon to use on your team in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So in summation, the best non-starter team members to pick in every game are Alakazam in Gen 1, Alakazam in Gen 2, Manectric in the Gen 3 Hoenn games, Nidoking in Fire Red and Leaf Green, Staraptor in the Sinnoh games, Ampharos in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Excadrill in Black and White, Magnezone in Black 2 and White 2, Mega Lucario in X and Y, Mega Manectric in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, Toucannon in Sun and Moon, Hawlucha in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Nidoking in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and Corviknight in Sword and Shield. Thank you so much for watching, and an extra special thanks to my patrons over on Patreon, who are helping support my channel during a time for lower than they should be YouTube ad rates. If you want to help support me in the same way, the link is in the description below. And if you want to check out some more of my fun Pokemon content, I recommend these videos here. Alright, that's all I have for now, so until next time, big fans, gotta catch them all!